Carrie Washington settled into her seat for what she anticipated would be a routine interview with Ibrahim Traoré. However, as Traoré began to share his poignant narrative and profound vision, the exchange veered into deeply emotional territory. Carrie's response, dabbing at tears on national television, resonated profoundly with viewers and ignited a deluge of admiration across the internet. Witness the moving dialogue that has captured everyone's attention. It was a Monday afternoon in Los Angeles under the sheen of the studio lights. The cameras were active and Carrie Washington was seated, composed, in her designated chair. The day's agenda appeared straightforward: a discussion with Ibrahim Traoré, the youthful president of Burkina Faso, centered on leadership and the continent of Africa's future. Kerry offered a smile for the broadcast, riffling through her notes just as the host made the introduction. Yet, when Ibrahim entered, an element of his serene presence instantly quieted the assembled crowd. He was not attired in a costly suit, but in a simple jacket, his face graced with the genuine smile of a man who felt he had nothing to demonstrate. Kerry extended a warm welcome, but her typical self-assurance seemed to falter as he took the seat opposite her. His tranquil gaze appeared to penetrate directly into her own, seeing something deeper within. They began with customary pleasantries. Then, Kerry posed a light-hearted query. "So, President Traoré, what is it like to govern a nation that so many have dismissed?" He didn't chuckle. He showed no sign of being fazed. He merely met her gaze and stated gently, "It feels like shouldering the fate of children who won't live to see another day if I do not succeed." A stillness fell over the audience. Kerry's smile vanished as a knot formed in her chest. Leaning forward, Kerry sensed a greater depth to his statement. "Could you explain what you mean by that?" she inquired softly. Ibrahim's expression remained composed, yet a shimmer appeared in his eyes. He directed his gaze toward the cameras, speaking not for his own sake, but for someone who might be watching. "Last week, he started, I attended the burial of a boy named Umar. He was a mere 11 years old. He perished while fetching water for his kin on a route far too perilous for any child to traverse. His mother, standing in the dust, implored me to explain why her son had to meet such an end. Lacking an answer, I vowed then to change it, regardless of the personal cost." Kerry's throat constricted, her hands clenching the note cards she held. "My leadership isn't a pursuit of power," he went on. "I lead because every child in my nation is deserving of more than dust, terror, and silence." For the first time all day, the studio audience became utterly silent. There were no cell phones illuminated, no whispers exchanged, only the resonance of his unwavering voice permeating the space. Kerry blinked in quick succession, fighting to hold back tears, but his subsequent words shattered her composure. "And my fear," he added with a soft tone, "is that I am already too late for a great many of them." Kerry swallowed with difficulty, her voice breaking. "Too late," she echoed weakly. Ibrahim affirmed with a nod, his eyes lowering. "Each morning I awaken to a new report. A school incinerated, a village decimated. Another child's name is added to the roster of lives we were unable to safeguard." He looked up again, his eyes locking with hers. "Answer me this, Miss Washington. How can one sleep with the knowledge that their people are dying?" Kerry's lips parted, but she was bereft of words. She could feel the tears welling up, hot and insistent. And in that moment, broadcast live, she reached for a tissue to pat her eyes, whispering, "I don't know." The audience stirred with unease, many among them wiping away their own tears. The camera operator focused closer as a lone tear traced a path down Ibrahim's cheek, the first display of his own sorrow. Kerry looked at him and murmured, "I am so sorry." He offered a faint, tired smile. "Do not be sorry," he replied gently. "Simply help me share their stories." The cameras continued to film, documenting a moment that no one could have orchestrated, a quiet heartbreak that rippled across the globe. As the cameras zoomed closer, Ibrahim reached inside his jacket, placing a weathered photograph on the table that separated them. Kerry's eyes fell upon it, and she froze. The picture showed a young, barefoot boy clutching a tattered notebook against his chest. His large, hopeful eyes seemed to bore into the lens, as if pleading for anyone to acknowledge his existence. Ibrahim's voice was subdued but distinct. "This is Adama," he said. He dreamed of becoming a doctor. He would walk 6 kilometers to his school each morning. 2 weeks ago, his school came under attack. Adama never returned home that day. Carrie's lips separated slightly as she gazed at the boy's image. The audience was transfixed, their collective breath almost audible. "He was only 12, Ibrahim continued, "but in my heart, he was my son. They are all my children." Kerry pressed her fingers against her lips. She felt the familiar warmth build behind her eyes, but found herself unable to look away from the photo. "Every choice I make," Ibrahim carried on, "is for children like Adama, because if I am unsuccessful, they don't merely lose their hope, they lose their very lives." For a long moment, nobody in the studio dared to even blink. Carrie swallowed with effort, her voice trembling when she finally managed to ask, "How do you bear all of that sorrow?" Ibrahim shifted his focus from the photograph to her. His response came after a prolonged, quiet interval. "I do not bear it by myself," he stated softly. "I allow the children to sustain me. Whenever I feel the urge to surrender, I recall their faces, their laughter. Even possessing nothing, they manage to find joy. If they can persevere, then so can I." A single tear escaped and slid down Carrie's cheek as she nodded, rendered speechless. Behind the cameras, even the production crew appeared visibly moved. One operator discreetly wiped his own eyes. Ibrahim leaned back in his chair, his voice now nearly a whisper. "But it is difficult," he admitted. "It is difficult to smile at mothers, consumed by grief. It is difficult to stand before another grave and pledge that things will improve. Yet we are compelled to continue because they are worthy of better." The audience erupted in subdued applause, their own tears glistening. And still, Kerry could not tear her gaze from the photograph. The interview segment was scheduled to conclude after 15 minutes, but no one made a move to leave. Not Kerry, not the crew, not even the producer, who was anxiously signaling from off-camera. Kerry leaned forward again, her voice unsteady, but firm. "If Adama were able to hear you at this moment, what would you tell him?" Ibrahim's features softened. He looked down at the image, then back toward the camera as if communicating directly with the boy's spirit. "I would tell him, I am sorry. I am sorry that we let you down. But I give you my word, your name will not be forgotten. Your aspiration will not perish with you. I swear to you, Adama, we will persist in the fight. For every child who is still waiting, for every dream that is still alive." The audience rose to their feet and started to clap, some of them weeping without restraint. Kerry patted her eyes, making no effort to conceal her own tears. The moment felt hallowed, unvarnished, and authentic. Ibrahim inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the emotion filling the room, and for the first time, Kerry reached over the table and took his hand in hers. The cameras continued to film, capturing an event that would soon serve as an inspiration to millions worldwide. After the program transitioned to a commercial break, a heavy silence lingered in the studio. Kerry continued to hold Ibrahim's hand as he discreetly passed her a folded slip of paper. "This was penned by Adama's mother," he clarified in a low voice. Kerry unfolded it, her fingers unsteady. The plain, shaky script read, "Thank you for acknowledging my son. Even in his passing, you grant him life. May you persist in fighting for our children." Tears flowed freely down Kerry's cheeks as she read the words aloud. The audience let out a collective gasp, and a cameraman captured her dabbing at her eyes once more. When the show returned from the break, Kerry's voice was thick with emotion as she said, "Mr. Traoré, I believe everyone watching at home is wondering, how can we contribute?" For the first time, Ibrahim smiled. It wasn't the practiced smile of a politician, but something modest and profoundly human. "You have already begun," he answered, "by paying attention, by remembering their names. But if you are able, please assist us in building what they require: clean water, secure schools, hope." Carrie's eyes glistened as she nodded, unable to articulate a response. The cameras scanned the audience, where even grown men were seated with tears coursing down their faces. Once the show concluded, the audience filed out deliberately, though many lingered, hoping for an opportunity to speak with Ibrahim. A young woman, tightly holding her daughter's hand, was the first to approach him. "Mr. Traoré," she said, her words punctuated by sobs. "I had never considered Burkina Faso before this evening. I wasn't even sure of its location. But now, I will never forget it. I give you my promise." Ibrahim stooped slightly to look into the little girl's eyes, he gave her a gentle smile and handed her the photograph of Adama. "Look after him for me," he said softly. The girl nodded with gravity, clutching the photo as if it were a priceless treasure. When Carrie descended from the stage, she was taken aback to find her entire crew arranged in a line, awaiting their chance to shake Ibrahim's hand. Some offered him a silent embrace, unable to articulate their feelings. By the time he departed, the studio Adama and #Stand with Ibrahim were trending across the globe. Millions of individuals posted their own pledges. "We acknowledge you now. We will never forget." And Ibrahim, he simply entered his vehicle and posed a quiet question to his aide. "How many children will we be able to help with the funds raised?" Thus far, that evening, alone in his hotel room, Ibrahim sat near the window, gazing out at the city's illuminated expanse. He turned his phone over and over, perusing the torrent of messages that continued to arrive. One from a young boy in Chicago particularly stood out. "Dear President Traoré, my name is Jamal. I am 11. I want to become a doctor, just like Adama. Please do not cease your fight. You inspire hope in me, too." Ibrahim managed a faint smile, though his eyes welled with tears. He glanced at his briefcase. Within it were more letters, more names, more children he held in his heart. In that moment, he whispered into the stillness of the room, "Adama, they remember you now. The entire world does." He closed his eyes, allowing the tears to fall without restraint. Outside, the streets of Los Angeles teemed with activity, but in one quiet corner, a president sat by himself, shouldering the burden of a nation and the hope of millions more. And he pledged to himself that tomorrow he would continue the struggle. The following morning, Ibrahim was awakened by the ringing of his phone. It was Kerry. Her voice was still laden with emotion. "Mr. Traoré, I cannot stop reflecting on last night," she confessed. "And neither can anyone else. The network wants you to return for another segment this evening." During prime time, Ibrahim paused for a moment before asking quietly, "Will it benefit the children?" "Yes," she affirmed with conviction. "We have already raised more than $500,000 since last night. People are insisting on knowing more. They are eager to help." He shut his eyes and nodded to himself. "Then I will be there." Evening, the car arrived at the studio once more. This time, the crowd gathered outside was larger, holding candles, posters bearing Adama's face, and banners that declared, "We see you. Hope for Burkina Faso." As Ibrahim emerged, the crowd parted and broke into applause. Some wept openly at the sight of him. He moved through them with a quiet dignity, pausing every few steps to offer an embrace or shake a hand. Kerry was already there, her own eyes shimmering as she observed him through the glass. As the cameras began to roll, Kerry leaned forward. "Mr. Traoré, last night you mentioned that you carried these children as if they were your own. May I ask, do you have children of your own?" The question seemed to catch him by surprise for the first time. His jaw set, and his voice became low. "No," he said softly. "I do not have children, but I lost one." The room fell still. Kerry blinked, her hand moving instinctively toward his doir. He went on, his breath hitching. "My sister's daughter. She died from cholera at the age of 6. There was no physician, no sanitary water. I was a soldier at the time, and I vowed that no child in my country should ever perish in that manner again." His hands were trembling as he set a second photograph on the table. This one was of a little girl in a worn pink dress, offering a shy smile. Kerry covered her mouth with her hand. The audience gasped audibly. Some began to cry, and Ibrahim, his voice faltering just slightly, said, "Every child I champion is Awa to me." When the segment concluded, no one stirred. The lights remained on. The cameras continued to record. Kerry was the first to stand, reaching for his hand. Then the audience followed suit, rising, clapping, many with tears in their eyes. The ovation persisted. For nearly 2 full minutes they stood, not just for the man, but for every narrative, every name, every voiceless child he represented. Ibrahim's shoulders trembled slightly as he bowed his head in gratitude. Kerry turned to the cameras and addressed the world directly. If you are watching this and you remain unmoved, look once more. Look into his eyes. Look at AWA. Look at Adama. And then ask yourself, what would you do if it were your child? Donations surged in that hour. Social media ignited with clips of the moment. People from every part of the planet shared their personal stories of loss, hope, and resolve, all sparked by a single man. And as Ibrahim departed the studio that night, he whispered under his breath, "We are no longer unseen." The next morning, Ibrahim was making preparations to leave Los Angeles when Kerry called once more. "Don't depart just yet," she implored. "I want you to meet someone." An hour later, she showed up at his hotel with a small boy named Caleb. He was 7 years old, in recovery from cancer, and had watched the interview the previous evening. Caleb's mother explained through her tears he said he wanted to meet the man who fights for the children no one else sees. Ibrahim knelt down before Caleb and smiled warmly. "You possess more strength than any soldier I have ever encountered," he said. Caleb hugged him without speaking, clinging to his jacket as if they were old acquaintances. Kerry observed, tears flowing down her face. As they parted, Caleb whispered, "Don't stop." Those 2 words resonated with Ibrahim as he boarded his flight that afternoon. He gazed out the window as Los Angeles receded below, already formulating his next course of action. Back in his country, so many children were still waiting, and now the world was paying attention. When Ibrahim's plane touched down in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso's capital, the sun was beginning to set. The arid air and familiar sounds welcomed him as his car navigated the tranquil streets. Awaiting him at his office were piles of documents, urgent dispatches, but also hundreds of letters from all over the globe. He opened a few at random. "You have opened my eyes. My family has just donated to reconstruct a school. You have given my daughter hope once more." For the first time in months, Ibrahim permitted himself to recline and smile. But the subsequent report his aide presented him with wiped the smile away. "Mr. President," the aide said softly, "another attack. A school. 4 children have died." Ibrahim closed his eyes, pressing his fingers to his forehead. Despite all the global attention, the violence had not ceased. He got up from his chair and stated quietly, "Ready the convoy. We depart at first light." There was still work to be done, with no time for rest. The following morning, Ibrahim stood in a silent, devastated village. The school's roof was charred from the blaze. Mothers wept in their doorways. The names of the lost children were being inscribed on a makeshift board. Ibrahim walked at a slow pace, acknowledging each family. Some wept on his shoulder. Others simply stared, their eyes vacant and hollow. At one point, he knelt next to a small boy sitting in the dust. "What is your name?" he asked gently. "Isa," the boy answered, his voice barely a whisper. "What do you want to become?" "Isa, a teacher," Isa murmured, "so that no one forgets about us." Ibrahim nodded, swallowing with difficulty. He placed his hand tenderly on the boy's head and whispered, "Then I will ensure they never do. That is my pledge." To you, a photographer nearby documented the exchange, and that photograph would soon be seen around the world, igniting even more hearts for his cause. But as he stood there, encircled by ashes and grief, Ibrahim's own heart felt more burdened than ever before. And yet he remained standing tall, because he was aware that the world was now watching. That evening, after his visit to the burned-out school, Ibrahim went back to Ouagadougou. He was exhausted. He had barely exited his car when his aide rushed toward him, out of breath. "Mr. President, you must see this." The aide showed him a tablet displaying a live feed from New York, London, Nairobi, Tokyo. Hundreds of thousands of people were gathered in public squares, holding candles. Screens displayed Adama's photograph. Signs carried the names of Awa, Isa, and countless others. And a chant began to rise. "We see you, we see you, we see you." Ibrahim set the tablet down and walked out into his office's courtyard. To his astonishment, an identical scene greeted him there. Thousands of Burkinabe citizens stood outside, candles in hand, murmuring the names of the children he fought. 4. Tears filled his eyes as he stood in silence, overcome with emotion. In that quiet night, Ibrahim finally let himself believe. The world was no longer averting its gaze. The next morning, Ibrahim's phone rang. It was Kerry again, her voice full of warmth and emotion. "Ibrahim," she said, "you have transformed the world in a mere 5 days. I don't understand how you manage it." "I didn't," he answered gently. "They did. The world simply required a reminder of what love can manifest as. Kerry fell silent for a moment before saying softly, "I want to travel to Burkina Faso to witness it for myself. To meet the children you champion. Would you permit me?" Of course, Ibrahim replied with a faint smile. Come and see what hope looks like amidst the dust. Later that day, Ibrahim stood at his window observing a group of children playing soccer on the street outside his office. The sound of their laughter drifted on the breeze. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Our work is not yet done." On the 7th day following that initial interview, Ibrahim and Kerry stood side by side in the courtyard of a newly rebuilt school. The children were cheering, waving small flags. Mothers wept as desks were brought in, books were arranged, and walls were painted. Kerry wiped away her tears once more as the cameras recorded. "What is your next step, Mr. President?" she asked. Quietly, he bent down to speak to a little girl who was holding a well-worn notebook. "We continue to build," he said softly. "One child at a time, one school at a time, until there is nothing left to reconstruct, only aspirations left to pursue." The little girl smiled up at him, and Ibrahim straightened, turning to the cameras. "We are not impoverished because we possess nothing," he stated with resolve. "We are wealthy because we have one another, and we will rise in unity." The world watched in real time as applause and tears filled the air. Dear viewers, if this narrative has resonated with you, do not merely observe. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and express your thoughts in the comments. Which part affected you the most? Whose name will you carry with you tonight? Post it below. Let us keep their legacies alive together. Click subscribe, like, and comment now. And we thank you for seeing.